it reminds me, John Maxwell's a great writer. He talks about failing forward. So that's basically the principle that I've worked under too. My mom is a great mentor and role model to me, and she always told me to take the hard jobs nobody else wanted. She said that it's easy to take the jobs everybody wants, but take the hard jobs nobody wants, because that's how you prove yourself and that's where you take the risks. I'm sitting here, I think all of us in this panel and probably all of you in the room could sit and think of many risks you've taken in your careers to get where you are or to be who you are. I would say the two biggest risks, I'm going to share a personal one and a professional one. The biggest personal risk I ever took was, like most of you, put my career first. Our speaker earlier today said one of her regrets was not having children, and I had been in a long-term relationship for 7 years, turned 35 years old, and that was my scary birthday. I wanted to be married and have 3 children, and I was single and had this fabulous career and no family, and ended a long-term relationship. So I took the risk and had my daughter on my own, and she's now 6.5, so it was the best decision I ever made. I wasn't going to miss that because I kind of forgot that in my career process to have that work-life balance, and I forgot that along the way. So that was one of my personal risks, trying to take a village of my family and friends to raise a child and continue my career. So that was one of the greatest risks I've ever taken in my life, and a good one. And I think that gives me perspective, being a 43-year-old with a 6-year-old who, when I told her I was going to talk today in front of a room full of people, she said, "Aren't you scared, Mommy?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm a little bit, but it's going to be fine, because what do I teach you? You can do anything." And so it's a great balance of perspective for me at this point in my career. I would say professionally, the biggest risk I would say to date is a gentleman by the name of Greg Hames, who I've known for 20 plus years, who is the president of Viking Electric, who was one of my first clients. He was a sales manager I went and sold Halo cans to in the early 90s. Or mid-90s, and he's been the president of Viking for a long time. He called me up one day and said, "Hey, Mavros," and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm driving through Iowa." And he said, I have this job I want you to interview for. I want you to interview to be the president of Brooke Electric in Chicago." I was like, "Okay, well, that's a distributor," and I've been in manufacturing my entire career. And I go, "Why would I want to do that?" And he goes, "Because I think it would be really good for you." And then he proceeded to, he could sell anything. And he proceeded to try to sell me on interviewing, which he did. So I interviewed for this job with a lot of other people. It was a big risk to come to distribution from manufacturing, where I had built my career and my reputation. And it was also an incredible risk because Brooke at the time was undergoing incredible change management. The market in Chicago was changing, Brooke is changing, and Brooke was a company at the time that was somewhat broken. And I had no idea what I was walking into, and quite frankly, he didn't really either, because someone had to get in the company and figure out what was the best path for Brooke for the future. So it was a change management opportunity and a scary one, not only leaving what I was familiar with, but going into the distribution side of the business. And I can tell you, anyone who's a manufacturer in this room, I thought I knew what distributors did for a living until I became one. And I can tell you, if you're in manufacturing, you've never been in distribution, you have no idea. It gave me an incredible perspective, and it's been an incredible journey, because it would have been easier at that point for us to have started a new company than to have done what we did in change management. We turned over 50% plus of the company, and we had to start from ground one to create the culture of the business and the culture of the employees and the morale, and build a team to be successful in Chicago. And so it was interesting. Greg very prophetically said to me the day I started, "It will bring you the greatest rewards of your career, and it'll also bring you the greatest heartache of your career," and it has done both. Because the beauty of, short of owning the company outright, the beauty of Sonepar is that you're empowered to own the company and run it like it's yours. So you live and breathe it along with your employees as if you own it. And so it's been the greatest risk I've ever taken professionally.
My story is as much a personal story as a professional one. I had my daughter 11 years ago, and my husband and I were both working. We were living in Atlanta. We were both traveling fairly regularly, and we had a nanny who came into our home every day, and she was perfect. I opened the door for the interview. This woman looked like Mrs. Doubtfire. She was perfect. Her name was Elena Kolyanova. She was from St. Petersburg, Russia. We loved her. And so my husband and I thought, we're set. This is going to be our life. It's perfect. There are 4 of us, us, our baby, and Elena. After my daughter's 6-month shots, I took her to get her shots. And when we got home, she's very upset. It hurts, whatever. And we get home, she leaned away from me and to Elena for comfort. And I will never forget how that moment felt. And I told my husband, this baby is spending more time with Elena than she is with you or me. And we decided in that day, me through tears, that was going to change. If we had to be broke, we were going to change that. And so it was a race to who was getting the job so that the other one would stay home. And I secretly hoped it was me, to be honest. And so a couple of months later, I had an opportunity to do the global job and pick up and move to Connecticut with GE. And we talked about it at home for a long time. He really wasn't sure that was what he wanted to do. I wasn't really sure that moving everything that we knew, although neither of us was from there, it was very close to family and friends that could help with this baby. And so we decided we're going to go for it. We're just going to go all in on my career, see how I do, give it a spin, be home with this baby more. Long story short, we moved to Connecticut. We're 16 hours away from anybody that we know and love. Things ended up going fairly well for me, and I think because we decided to go all in, and I had a little bit of pressure, but I also had an increased support at home. With this wonderful man. Within 90 days, I was pregnant again. So there's a story there too, by the way. Don't not do something because you have plans to have a baby or plans to get married or have plans to whatever it is you're going to do. Do the career, go for it, and do both because you deserve it. So within 90 days, we were pregnant again. I'm traveling 2 to 3 weeks at a time out of the country. Don had some, emasculating moments, I'm sure. And he had a transition period, leaving the workforce and being a stay-at-home dad. But because we went all in, I think the reward is we have this, I think we have pretty smart kids. They're fairly well-grounded. Things have worked out for us in terms of my career development. I thank him every day for giving me this opportunity to do what I do professionally. The kids don't hate me, and we're living a really, really solid life. Had we not done that, I think maybe that things would have been great too, but maybe not as amplified as where we are today. And I thank the 3 of them.
That's a great story. Yes, those are tough choices, and it sounds like yours worked out.
Yes, thank you.
Very nice. Okay, so
Can I answer that one?
sure. Oh, I'm
Do you
sorry.
mind? I got my story in my head,
I'm
Sandy.
sorry.
I know what I was going to say.
I forgot about you.
No, so for me, I was looking to leave Millbank Manufacturing. I was looking for a job. But because you're not allowed to leave the electrical industry once you get in, my options were limited in Kansas City, let's just say, for that side of the story. So my husband said, well, his kids were in high school. And he said, well, it's okay if you want to look outside, maybe we can look a little farther, outside of Missouri or whatever. He said, but my vote's for warm and sunny. So I said, okay, great. So I looked in Texas and California and Florida. And then I found this job with AD, and it's VP of Marketing. It's for a buying group. There's only really 2 positions like it in our industry. Steve Ruane had the other one. And so I went to my husband and said, I have this great opportunity, but it's in Philadelphia. And he said, well, what part of warm and sunny did you miss? And I'm like, because he went to Carnegie Mellon. He knew what it was like in Pennsylvania. And I said, honey, this is such a great opportunity for me. I've been on the manufacturing side, but, to be able to have that exposure and really at a buying group, you're sort of sitting on the fence. So I got to see all of the go-to-market strategies for the major manufacturers in our industry. And then because I was part of AD, I got to be really on the other side of the fence on the distributors as well. So great distributors in AD. I learned a ton about other manufacturers, what they were doing, about how distributors run their business models, and really about a buying group and how a buying group really does business. So it was an opportunity that my husband afforded me. He kept the house in Kansas City. I moved to Philadelphia, and I spent my weeks there when I wasn't traveling. And on the weekends, we would go back and forth. So it is a bit emasculating in that people would say, "Oh, I hear your wife moved to Philadelphia to get away from you." You know,
Like that doesn't.
yeah, it's, you know, they thought that was really funny, but at the same time, you know, that was a strain on our marriage to be apart so much, so often, so far away. So, you know, I'm so thankful to the husband that I have. He supported me. He knows how important my job is to me. His biggest fear is that I'll never retire, that I can't do anything but work. But his support means the world to me. He's the best. He's my best friend. He's the best man I've ever met. So.
Very nice. Okay, now I'll open it up to the floor. Are there any follow-up questions on?
When we look at men in the industry and they come across as very confident, make quick decisions, they are sometimes considered leaders. When women do that at times, we are considered other things that aren't so positive. So how do you keep that balance to not come across as some of the negative connotations that we can get, but still be that strong leader and make those decisions that are forceful, etc.?
I'll start. So, I think that sometimes we focus a lot on, are we bossy, and they're leaders, and I actually have stopped doing that completely. I think it's more about, are you a fair leader? How do you respectfully communicate with your people? And a lot of times the difficult decisions that we have to make, or any leader has to make, it's meant to empower the rest of the team. If somebody needs to leave the team because they're not good for the team, it's not because you're bossy, it's because somebody else has to overcompensate for that person or that gap, or it's because they have to go because the rest of the team could see their malperformance and then therefore start to pull back as well, because if someone's getting away from it, they can too, or with it, they can too. So, I want to get away from that mentality of us worrying about being too bossy and dancing around everything and walking on eggshells. Do the fair thing. Communicate respectfully for the people, with your people, and make the business better through your time in every single job that you have. And I think that they start to respect that and focus on that, other than whether or not you can wear skirts to work. Yeah.
It's a great answer.
I have completely the same philosophy on that as you, Dana. I am never hesitant to be confident and quick in a decision. I think people might call women bossy if they tell people what to do. And I don't think any good leader tells people what to do. I think you share the vision and set goals and help people get there, and they might have a different path than you do. But being confident and being decisive is not being bossy or bitchy.
I would also say that, having a passion for your business and being authentic overrides everything else. So if you're passionate about your business, people like to say, she's emotional. We sometimes get offended when someone says we're emotional. My response is, yes, I'm emotional. I'm passionate about my business, and I'm passionate about my people, and I'm passionate about what we're doing. And so you want me to be emotional because it means I'm engaged and invested. Emotional is not a dirty word, and apologizing for being women is not acceptable anymore. We spend a lot of time, and a lot of the women who work for me spend a lot of time apologizing for being women, and we have to stop.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't know how I could top any of that, but I would just say that, I've learned over time to speak up, And I've learned over time to disagree with my boss. And if I add value by giving my opinion, I would certainly speak up and say, I would disagree, and here's why. But I would very respectfully say that to him. And I think the people who report to me have no problem disagreeing with one of my decisions. And if they can add value, or they have a perspective that I don't have that helps me make a better decision, I'm all for that.